Hey, and welcome back to the channel, and this is the newly refreshed ROG Ally X. Now, I've had this retail unit for a few weeks now, and I've actually been using the pre-production for nearly 2 months now, and I want to give you guys my first impression and how this compares to my OG Ally and see whether or not you should consider selling your OG Ally and upgrading to this, or maybe you should hold out for other handhelds or maybe even the Ally 2. But before we go ahead and talk about, the new stuff and the differences between this new Ally X and the OG Ally, let's talk specs real quick. So inside the new ROG Ally X is the same AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme processor that's currently in the OG Ally, but the kicker here is that this year's Ally X comes with 24 gigs of RAM at 7,500 megatransfers per second, which is a lot more memory than last gen and faster too. Besides that, we're getting 1 terabyte as a standard, and the best part is we can now use the standard size 2280 SSD. Previously, you had to buy an adapter just to use the 2280 SSD or buy a more expensive 2230 SSD in stores. So this is a huge W for us handheld gamers. And you know what else is a huge W for us? A bigger battery. The OG Ally packed a rather small 40 watt-hour battery, which barely lasts an hour if you're gaming in performance mode or turbo mode. On this year's Ally X, we now have a much bigger 80 watt-hour battery, which is a massive upgrade for a handheld this size. Besides that, the display is still the same 7-inch 1080p IPS panel that has variable refresh rate up to 120 Hz, which in my opinion is the perfect size and resolution for a handheld. And they also removed the proprietary port up top for their own eGPU and replaced it with a USB 4 port so that we can use any eGPUs that we want instead of, their overpriced eGPU, which performed great, but was just way too overpriced for what they were. Oh, and also the micro SD card slot, yeah, that's been moved from the left side to the right side of the device, which I hope won't ruin the micro SD in the future, but it's too soon to tell whether it will or it won't. Now, one of the biggest differences you'll notice right away with the Ally X is, of course, the color. As far as I know, the Ally X only comes in this flat black color, and they made a ton of improvements to make the Ally X a little bit more comfortable to game on, and I'm really glad that they made these changes. Now, one thing that you might notice right away when you pick up the device is that it's slightly heavier and a little bit more chunkier. The grip on the sides is a little bit more rounded off and feels a little bit more grippier than before, and the back buttons, which I thought was annoying on the OG Ally, sits a little bit more flush on the actual device now, and it's smaller, which makes holding the Ally X feel more comfortable to hold, and you're less likely going to press on those buttons by accident. Now, another thing that they improved here are the triggers. They're sitting at a slightly different angle than before, and they're also a little bit bigger. Pushing down on them feels really nice too. It kind of has, some weight to it, which I like. Unfortunately, they're not Hall effect triggers, but they do feel good, and the actuation point doesn't feel too heavy, nor do they feel mushy. I think they're really good. The shoulder buttons, on the other hand, I kind of prefer the older one over this new one, just because the old one feels a little bit snappier and more tactile in a way. This one is just ever so slightly softer or a little bit more mushy, but that's more of a personal preference thing. The analog sticks are also much improved here with better range and control, and they also feel a little bit more tight when you're using them. Last gen felt a little bit loose and just didn't feel all that great to use, to be quite honest, and these have a nice grip to them, and I don't know if I'm tripping or what, but they feel slightly bigger too. They're almost like Xbox-like in a way. Now, sad thing is though, these are not Hall effect joysticks either, but they did tell me that you can easily swap these out for, Hall effect joysticks if you wanted. I'm not sure if I'll do that, but out of the box, they feel really good and haven't had any issues with them, a couple months in. Now, they also improved the face buttons here. The A, B, X, Y buttons feel snappier and much more clicky than before, which I really like. And the D-pad also feels great too. I think they're a little bit less mushy overall, which is great. Now, throughout my testing, I've also been using the OG Ally as a reference point, and side by side, the differences are somewhat noticeable. And if you're actually wondering why all of a sudden my OG Ally turned into this behemoth, it's because I recently got my hands on Dbrand's killswitch, and it's pretty sweet. If you're not convinced to upgrade to the ROG Ally X, but you kind of want better ergonomics and you want a more comfortable way to play on your OG Ally, you got to look into this. So basically you get this cover that goes around the Ally, which makes it, grippier and a little bit thicker, which helps for bumps and dings. And you can also add this front cover here, so you can just slap this on and you can literally travel with this and make sure that your OG Ally is protected. Now, I also added textured analog sticks covers, which I'll be honest, after using the Ally X for a month, I feel like the Ally X still has, you know, the better sticks overall. But this one from the killswitch kit kind of helps make it feel better. But yeah, if you're not planning on picking up the Ally X, but just, you know, want a similar refresh in a way, pick up the killswitch for your OG Ally by using the first link down below and help support the channel. And huge shout out to Dbrand for sponsoring a portion of this video. Okay, so now that we've covered, I guess, some of the differences and what's new with the device, how does it game and perform on a daily basis? The differences in materials and hardware upgrades, like, you know, more RAM and bigger battery, makes this device feel so much snappier and better than before. Games that I've been playing for the past few months, like, you know, Modern Warfare 3 or Warzone, High on Life, Tekken 8, and Street Fighter, all ran really well on this Ally X. Now, even though it's using the same Z1 Extreme processor in here, the bump up in RAM and higher transfer rate is much appreciated here, because I can tell that, you know, games that were a little bit stuttery on the OG Ally played a bit smoother here on the Ally X, just because we can give 8 gigs of RAM to the VRAM and 16 gigs to, you know, everything else, which makes the system a little bit more responsive. Now, if you're like me and you're playing on a handheld for longevity, not necessarily, you know, to have the best graphics, the bigger battery is definitely noticeable here, especially if you're playing at that 13-watt TDP, which, by the way, that's another thing that they changed here. They got rid of the 10-watt and 15-watt TDP options and replaced it with 13 watts and 17 watts respectively, and I kind of like this change. Most of the games that I play, once you tweak the settings, I can get away by playing at that 13-watt TDP, and I'm still able to get a solid 60 frames per second in most of the games that I play. If I need a little bit more juice, I bump it up to 17 watts, and battery doesn't get affected too much. And speaking of that battery, the bigger 80-watt-hour battery is so nice here. I can play a lot longer, be more confident playing games on long-haul flights. Obviously, everyone's gaming preference is different, but with, you know, the games that I like to play, I can get about 2 to 3 hours of gameplay on the Ally X, which is a big deal. And I'm almost always playing at that 13-watt TDP. Now, if you're more of a platformer gamer or, you know, like to play indie games at a lower TDP, you're gonna love how long battery life is on this Ally X. I kind of wish we still had, you know, the preset options for that 10-watt TDP for lower demanding games, you know, just to extend battery life a little bit more. But yeah, if only this had an OLED display, it would probably be more efficient and could even see longer battery life. But honestly, how the Ally X is right now with the upgrades that it received, I'm pretty happy with it already. So yeah, that's everything that you need to know about the ROG Ally X. You saw what the box is going to look like and the unboxing experience, what the differences are between this and the OG Ally. And honestly, it doesn't seem like much has changed, but the more you really use it, the more you appreciate the differences. I just know that if the Ally 2 looked like this, but in white and use RDNA 3.5 architecture, then it's game over. Because as far as I know, RDNA 3.5 at that 15-watt TDP can get similar performance to a chip with RDNA 3 architecture at 28-watt TDP, which is just nuts. So if you want to wait for the Ally 2, then I totally get it, because I know for sure that they're not going to use the Z1 Extreme processor on the Ally 2. Otherwise, that would be very dumb. Anyways, that's been it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.